everyone and welcome to my Warhammer 40k guides. I am Brady. In today's episode we will be discussing how to use stratagems strategically. I've been asked to cover this quite a few times, so I figured it was about time I did. So anyways, let's not waste any more time and let's get right into it. Stratagems and command points are brand new with 8th edition. It's the first time the game has used a system like this, and I think it's a great system. It took a lot of the overpowered formation rules that used to exist in 7th edition and changed them to work in a way that you have to spend command points to use the really strong rules instead of just getting them for free because you brought X, Y, and Z units. It forced you to pick and choose when to use them alongside other really strong rules, which gave a lot of strategy to the game. With that little summary said, let's talk about when and why you should use your stratagems. First off, when you are building your list for 8th edition with a Codex army, you should always go to the stratagems first and decide which stratagems are strong and fit your playstyle. And then you build an army around that. The reason you do this is because let's say you really like dreadnoughts, so you build an army with nothing but dreadnoughts. Then you go and look at your stratagems and see that there are 0 stratagems for your dreadnoughts or your army. Well, I guess that means you're just going to be using the reroll stratagem a lot. And because stratagems are so huge in the game right now, you don't really want to do this. You want to find something that synergizes with the good stratagems. So instead, build your army around stratagems. Obviously there are other things to consider when making an army, but stratagems are a really big part of it. If you want to know some of the other variables on how to build your army, check out my How to Build a Competitive Army List from Scratch video to get the rest of the variables to make a good list. To help explain this better, I'll go over exactly how I decided to build my list. First, I looked at the Legion traits. I play Chaos Space Marines, and I decided which one I liked the most and suited my playstyle. So I picked Alpha Legion because it's the best for a CSM gun line, and that's my preferred playstyle. Next, I looked at the stratagems and found 2 I liked. One stratagem called Veterans of the Long War, which adds 1 to the wound rolls made by infantry or bikes, which works with shooting. And I figured this would go well on Havoc squads with heavy bolters because I'd be wounding most infantry in the game on 2s. Then I saw another stratagem that allows Slanesh infantry to shoot again at the end of the phase. Realizing this synergizes with Veterans of the Long War stratagem, I can end up shooting that unit that has a +1 to wound twice. This is how I decided spamming Havoc squads with heavy bolters was my best bet for anti-infantry. They get the Legion trait and benefit from those 2 stratagems, which makes a really strong combo. I also made sure to have 1 squad with a missile launcher to make use of the stratagem that has a missile launcher do mortal wounds to flyers, which helps a lot against Magnus and Morty in chipping them down. I then saw that I needed anti-tank, so I looked for stratagems to synergize with anti-tank, and I found the Fire Frenzy stratagem for Hellbrutes that allows them to shoot twice at the nearest target. This can be manipulated by your opponent since it has to be the closest target, but when your opponent flies a Storm Raven too close, or Magnus, or Morty, or you use your anti-infantry to get rid of the screen and then leave the tank being the closest, I am then shooting 4 last cannons and 2 missile launchers from 1 Hellbrute into that unit. And to add more to this, in the new FAQ, Chaos Derridu Dreadnoughts received the Hellbrute keyword, meaning I can use this stratagem on my Derridu Dreadnought. Meaning with the loadout I chose, I get 10 Strength 8, -3 AP, 3 damage shots, and 12 heavy bolter shots for 1 stratagem. That's pretty damn good for anti-anything if it gets too close. So I think with the example that I covered, you should now know how to tailor your army to be able to use the strongest stratagems that you have available. Building a list in 8th edition, this is the most efficient way to do it, is to build off of stratagems and of course the other variables that I mentioned in my other video. With that covered, let's get into when to actually use your stratagems. For the most part, if you are playing a Codex army, you build your list the way I did, which is around a few good stratagems. Then you should already have a game plan going into the game on when and why you are going to spend those command points. For me, it's find the scariest infantry unit and shoot them with my Heavics with heavy bolters that got prescience from my sorcerer so they're hitting on 2s, then give them Veterans of the Long War for the +1 to wound so they're wounding on 2s, and then use the Slanesh stratagem for them to shoot again at the end of the phase. This is a 3 command point combo I use in round 1 almost every game. The only time I don't use this combo in turn 1 is if my opponent is hiding that scary unit really well. I don't want to waste my command points on shooting units that I would kill normally anyways, so save them for killing the big scary units. This just takes time and game knowledge and knowing good target priority, which I cover in another video which I will show you right now. As for Fire Frenzy, I use it as soon as a tank or monster gets too close to my Hellbrutes and I blow it up with 1 Hellbrute. If my opponent has a screen for that tank and I need to get through that in order to use the Fire Frenzy stratagem efficiently, then I use my Havoc squads to destroy the screen, which then will make that unit the closest, so then I use my Hellbrute stratagem to fire everything at it twice. It's really that simple. Just learn what the stratagems do and then use them to gain as big of an advantage as possible. Now that I've covered codex specific and combo stratagems, let's get into the 3 basic ones everyone has access to. As for the normal 3 stratagems that every army has access to, I normally only use the reroll stratagem when it really matters. Now this is going to be tricky to explain, but I will try my best. In my list, I start with 8 command points. I already know 4 of them are being used on turn 1 because of veterans and the Slaneshi double shoot, and Fire Frenzy. So that means I can either do that whole combo again, or spend the points elsewhere. This is where game knowledge has to kick in, and you have to decide what's more important, using your combos to gain huge advantages or re-rolling one single dice. So that one single dice really has to net you a good advantage compared to what your other stratagems would. Sometimes re-rolling a single dice is worth it though. For example, I use Magnus the Red in my tournament list. Whenever I fail his invulnerable save and I'm about to take d6 damage, I always re-roll it, because odds are I'll make the save, and keeping Magnus alive means my opponent has to waste more shots into the durable bastard so that the rest of my army can go 100. I use Magnus as a giant distraction card effects that hits like a truck. So that's 5 out of my 8 command points usually spent on turn 1. 4 for those combos and 1 for the reroll. The only other time I use the reroll stratagem is when you really need something to die, but you just rolled that, and you're out of other options. For example, I had a game the other day where my opponent only had 4 last cannons in his list, and they were on 2 Mortis Dreadnoughts. If I kill those Dreadnoughts, then Magnus and my Hellbrutes get free reign on the game because there isn't anything left to efficiently kill them. I had bad luck in that turn, and 3 Hellbrutes only brought it down to 1 wound, and the Dreadnoughts still fire normally even on 1 wound, so I had to kill it or be shot by 4 full strength last cannons again. So on my final Hellbrute, because I run 4 in my list, he missed everything. Well, actually he hit, but he failed all of his wounds. And so I used a stratagem to re-roll a failed wound to try and kill the 1 wounded Dreadnought. Unfortunately for me, my opponent made his 5-up save, so it was all for nothing. But it was still the right choice, because if I had killed it, that's literally half of his anti-tank gone. So in times like those, you need to use your game knowledge to decide if that re-roll is worth it. But see how I said I waited until the last Hellbrute to re-roll? Because I had multiple Hellbrutes with multiple last cannons, I never used the reroll until there was 0 options left and after I had fired everything else. In the example I just gave, I shot everything at it and it still didn't kill it. So in the final shots that I had, I used the reroll to try and ensure I accomplished the goal that I had set out to do, which is to kill the Dreadnought. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do it, even though I think I still played the situation correctly. Another example of this is in the same game my opponent had Celestine standing in front of 7 Havoc Marines. She rolled a 2 for her Flamer, and my opponent asked if he should reroll since I'm trying to help him get better at competitive. To which I replied no, because even if she doesn't kill them here with the Flamer, she will most likely kill them on the charge. So because he still has options left to kill them, and to accomplish his goal of killing them, there's no point in rerolling for more hits because it would just be a waste. So never use the reroll for a hit or a wound unless that is the last weapon or option you have to kill the thing that you want to kill. As for the interrupting stratagem, the one that allows you to interrupt the flow of battle for 2 command points, only use it when the unit you wish to use to interrupt can severely wound the unit it's in combat with, and only if the unit you plan on killing hasn't attacked yet. If the opponent has already got off the attacks with that unit, then there is no point and you've already taken the damage. The point of this stratagem is to kill the unit that is going to kill you first. Here's an example from another game I had. I once charged my Khorne Lord on Juggernaut and my Alpha Legion Demon Prince into High Marshal Helbrecht from the Black Templars. There were only 2 units in combat, so they both get to go first. I used the Demon Prince first, since I figured he was strong enough to kill Helbrecht on his own, but Helbrecht made enough saves that he lived with 2 wounds left. My opponent then paid 2 command points for the stratagem to allow Helbrecht to fight my Chaos Lord first, before the Chaos Lord got to fight. And he ended up killing my Chaos Lord before he had a chance to hurt Helbrecht. This saved Helbrecht's life and swung the game in my opponent's favor, because on the next turn, he didn't charge anything, which was the right thing to do, so that Helbrecht could be the first one to fight. And then Helbrecht ended up killing the Demon Prince. So because of my bad luck and misplay, my opponent was able to save his HQ and swing the game into his favor. If he didn't use that stratagem, Helbrecht would rightfully be dead, and I'd still have both of my expensive HQs alive. As for the stratagem where you pay 2 points so a unit doesn't run away, I almost never use this because it's super situational. The only time I have ever really used this is when I needed a squad with objectives secured to stay alive to stop my opponent from getting objectives, or when you have a stratagem that does something cool and you want to use it. For example, my army has a stratagem where I can pay 2 points to pick up a unit of cultists and place them anywhere on the board back at full strength. Meaning if I started with 40 cultists and my opponent killed 34 of them, I can spend 2 command points to bring them back up to 40 guys and put them anywhere on the board. Well, along a table edge. But most of the time your opponent knows this, so they will whittle down your cultists enough to make morale kill the rest of them. But this is when you use your stratagem to keep them alive, so then you can use the other stratagem to regrow the unit next turn. So these are the only 2 situations I would normally use that stratagem. If I wanted to deny points for my opponent, or if I needed the unit alive long enough to pull off a combo that I had planned. Well anyways, that about covers it for this topic. If I forgot anything or just forgot to mention anything that you guys know, let me know down in the comments. But for the most part, this guide should help you know when to spend command points and how to plan out how to use those command points and stratagems. Also, sorry I haven't been producing a lot of videos in the past month. Between my trip to mini wargaming and the holidays, I've been really busy. But I should be back in full form now, and you guys can look forward to some great stuff coming in the future. I'll actually make an update video talking about that right after this one. Well anyways, if you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, just in case you didn't know, the channel also has a Patreon, so if you want to help support the channel, please feel free to do so on Patreon. The link is down in the description. So anyways, thanks for watching the video, I hope I taught you something, and I will see you in the next one. Happy wargaming!